For those of us of a certain age, it's hard to believe that we're approaching the 50th anniversary of two defining but very different moments in American history: the assassination of President Kennedy half a century ago, and shortly after the arrival of a British condition called Beatlemania that infected America. Tonight, we'll hear from Henry Grossman, a freelance photographer whose camera captured the spirit of both the young president and the even younger rock stars, plus a host of other faces that defined an era. Some of his shots have been hidden away for 50 years, shown here for the first time on television. Others you'll recognize in a heartbeat.
The story will continue in a moment.
I love this picture. Look at that. I was a photojournalist. I was trying to capture what was happening, what was going on. I wasn't interrupting them and saying, oh, wait a minute, I got to do that again. What is it? Seize the day, seize the moment. Smile. Stay right there. I like the light.
Over half a century ago, this picture changed Henry Grossman's life. John F. Kennedy in Boston, where Grossman, a student, often photographed visiting VIPs.
This was taken the day he announced his candidacy for president. I gave him a copy of this, and he called it his eyes portrait. He was very young and unknown.
You were pretty young yourself.
I was about 22, 23, yeah.
The encounter compelled Grossman to hit the road, tagging along on the Kennedy campaign.
The crowd wanted him, liked him so much.
Why did you decide you wanted to follow JFK around?
Personality was great, and there was an opportunity to photograph a man who could become president. Wasn't that fun?
A famous image taken on Wall Street. They're looking up what, people in windows? Was that it?
People in windows, they were beginning to throw confetti.
Another captured the savvy candidate posing with the Statue of Liberty. You were clearly a fan of his.
I was a fan of his, yes.
Did you go to great pains to make him look good?
Didn't have to try to make him look good. There I was.
After the election, he was a familiar face in the White House.
The president is just signing a picture here for me. We called him Jack all during the campaign, and even when he entered the White House, except not when people are around, because then it was Mr. President. This one I like because it looks like I'm an advisor to the president. And there's Jack with the bandage on his face because he bumped his head when he picked up a toy or something that Caroline had dropped.
Another famous image, a windblown JFK. It was published around the world.
I gave Jackie a copy of that picture because I loved it. And a friend of mine said, she looked at it and said, I think it's my favorite picture of Jack, which was very inspiring, very nice.
What was your reaction when you heard he was killed?
Oh, God. Sorrow. How deeply can sorrow be felt for the loss of what would have been, what could have been, what might have been, what was?
This was the front page of the New York Times the day after John Kennedy died. The portraits of the fallen president and his successor, both taken by Henry Grossman. He later photographed the former First Lady at home in New York.
She was very photogenic, very quiet. She could be sharp and strong.
Tough.
Yes. Lovely, but tough.
And he traveled with Robert Kennedy during his presidential campaign. Shortly before RFK was killed, Grossman caught him catnapping during an exhausting day on the road.
It's an eerie picture to me. Knowing what happened to him and having known what happened to his brother, my God.
Like many talented photographers, Henry Grossman also had great luck, being in the right place at the right time. This theater in New York, for instance, today it's home to the David Letterman Show. 50 years ago, a revolution took place here.
I lived a block away, so I walked over here with no anticipation, no understanding of what I would find. There's an English word, gobsmacked.
Yeah.
I was gobsmacked.
When Ed Sullivan introduced the Beatles to America, 73 million viewers were watching. Henry Grossman was there shooting for Time magazine.
I guess I shot the first couple of pictures of the guys on stage and what they were doing. Incredible.
We talked on stage at the very spot the music was made.
And then when I looked around, I could see the hysteria on some of these girls, tears streaming down their faces. Wow, look at that, look at that, look at that.
It was fascinating that these kids probably couldn't hear the band for their own voices, right?
I don't think it mattered.
Grossman figured that first glimpse of the band was probably his last. Did you feel, or did they feel, that this was just a flash in the pan?
I'm afraid they did. I was speaking with George in London at his house once. He said, Henry, who knows how long this is going to last? And that was 50 years ago, before they became icons of the century.
They would meet again. But for the moment, Grossman moved on, photographing in just a few weeks' time the wedding of Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton in Montreal, Barbra Streisand opening on Broadway in Funny Girl, and the Supremes, the other pop music phenomenon of 1964.
Let's see what these are. Oh, my gosh.
His archive, if you can call it that, is an archaeological dig into our collective past. Why don't you just open a drawer at random and pull something out and see what surprises we'll find here?
March on Washington. Oh, this is Eleanor Roosevelt and Mandela.
A hodgepodge of history.
Nixon.
He looks pretty happy. I mean, are you surprising yourself as you go through these?
Endlessly. Endlessly.
There's David Ben-Gurion, Israel's founding father, both fore and aft.
This was a shot I shot from the back.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
It looks like a flying saucer.
Yes, Saturn.
There's George Hamilton as Dracula, writer Kurt Vonnegut. Jimi Hendrix eating his guitar. The man who would be king, briefly, the Duke of Windsor and his American wife.
One of my favorite pictures, this is Cassius Clay, winner, after a knockout fight.
Before he was Muhammad Ali.
That was the celebration. There was a strawberry shortcake in front of him, and he was too tired and beat up to really appreciate it.
Beautiful women became a specialty. Jacqueline Bisset, Julie Christie, Mia Farrow, Meryl Streep. You really hung out with the babes a lot, didn't you?
Do you blame me?
Many of the performers he photographed have gone on to that great red carpet in the sky. Leonard Bernstein, the conductor and composer who gave us West Side Story. Maria Callas in her farewell Carnegie Hall recital. Another operatic superstar, Luciano Pavarotti, in a photo that could be a Renaissance painting. And Marilyn Monroe the night she sang Happy Birthday to JFK.
Wow. George Harrison and his Aston Martin.
But he's best known for his Beatles pictures, and for good reason. A recent limited edition book containing hundreds of previously unseen images sold out quickly at $500 a pop.
This is George Harrison in Nassau. He had obviously just gotten up. There was a look to him that was so simple and vulnerable. But look how open and honest he is.
And so ridiculously young.
Yes.
There he is. Hey, I tried to warn you.
He got to know them really well in the Bahamas when they made the film Help. Grossman tagged along shooting for Life magazine. It was a low-key affair, a far cry from the pandemonium of The Sullivan Show a year earlier. The photographer and the band hit it off.
I was a fly on the wall, watching and being a friend.
They talked, they joked. Each morning, Grossman served as the band's human alarm clock. Your wake-up call to the Beatles was what?
Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a wonderful feeling. Everything's going my way. And it did. This is a picture that Ringo took. John wanted to make my hair long and combed like a Beatle, which he tried to do. This is terrific fun for me.
As filming took them from Nassau to Austria to London in early 1965, he met the four young women who were the envy of teenage girls everywhere. Ringo and his wife Maureen, newlyweds. John and his wife Cynthia. Paul and girlfriend Jane Asher. Pattie Boyd, George's girlfriend and wife-to-be. Soon he was welcome in their homes in London. Life went on around him. Ringo and son Jason, a chip off the old block. John and Cynthia, and Julian, 2 years old. Everything looks very conventional with wives and girlfriends.
That was a surprise to me, too. John's house looked very much like a straight, middle-class American house. George and John were strumming guitars and playing while little baby Julian was watching. The girls, the wives, were in the living room talking about drapes and curtains.
Grossman was there for the band's famous audience with the Indian guru, the Maharishi. The Summer of Love, 1967.
I think they were genuinely hooked on him and what they might become through him. I don't know how long it lasted.
He took rare pictures of others in the Beatles family, Paul and his father Jim, Brian Epstein, the band's brilliant manager, George Martin, the legendary record producer.
George Martin was the kind of guy that was reading poetry in between recording the Beatles.
By 1970, the ending. The unraveling of the band. Grossman had moved on to other assignments, other interests, parting, though, with the greatest respect.
I loved them. They were terrific guys. They knew what they were doing. They knew who they were very well. They did not try to put on somebody that they're not. What was there and what you saw was what you got.
Looking at Henry Grossman's pictures, there's a sense of both joy and melancholy, of things past and times lost. But as the novelist Robert Goddard wrote, photographs don't distinguish between the living and the dead. The pictures are always there, and so are the people in them, frozen in the best time of their lives.
Go to 60minutesovertime.com for a gallery of rare Beatles photos and the memories of the man who took them.